Ani, Sego, Scanagoa. My English name is Joss. En français, Jocelyn Tremblay. Degini Chogawe, Young Yats, Mishkikibimoswin, Indigenous Cause. My community worker name is Two Crows. And my spirit name is Medicine Walker. I'm Amik Dodem, Beaver Clan. I am also Ashkimadzig, or Great Lakes Métis, of Ganyihaga ancestry from Gunstage, or the St. Lawrence River, Ottawa-Tomi, Odawa from the Detroit River, Mi'kmaq from the Annapolis Valley, Bay of Fundy area, Wyandot from Ontario, Ashkenazi and Gaelic from way back. And I grew up, my homelands are at the footwaters of the Shkanisibee, the Antrid River, also known as the so-called Thames River, close to Windsor, Detroit. And I now call home Niawa Onegagayi, the Little Thundering Waters, or Kobichinonksibi, where the trees stand in the water, also called so-called Humber River, and in the Humber Valley watershed, where I call home, in my sanctuary, my stomping grounds. And as a connection to that land and water base, myself and my colleagues with the Sweet Grassroots Collective have been so kindly welcomed to Black Creek Farm, which of course Black Creek is a tributary to the Humber, where we've been doing some ongoing re-indigenizing and restoring in the beautiful decolonial process there that folks are doing. And we were invited to share. Thank you for inviting us. As the pollinator lovers are coming together to share in those appreciations, we send our greetings and our gratitude, Desan Oheradu, to all the pollinators. And I wanted to share, my colleague Jennifer Lafontaine and I were doing some medicine packages for our community, and we were working with some wild bergamot from actually last year's harvest, dried. Look at this beautiful stalk. So for folks who are really into pollinator gardens, you must know then the cultivar of wild bergamot, which is bee balm. Herbalists and folks in aromatherapy know this plant as Monarda. It has so many different names because it's such an epic plant. Some people know this plant in the tea blend called Earl Grey, so classic of the British to get the black tea from India and get the bergamot from here and put them together and call it Earl Grey tea. Lols. This plant, of course, is so attractive to pollinators. It has such a strong smell, and it's an epic medicine. Things to note about it: it has a square stalk and oppositional leaves, which helps us to identify that it's part of the mint family, so related to all those different plants: chocolate mint, pineapple mint, what have you, spearmint that are referred to as mint, lemon balm, catnip, skullcap, motherwort, etc. It's a really beautiful family. Such amazing medicine, very soothing. Motherwort's part of that family too, really good nervine, so soothing of the nervous system, really good for digestive stuff. Bergamot just has such a slew of medicines. I really invite everyone, in terms of reconnecting to medicines from these lands, to connect to bergamot, wild bergamot in particular, and to restore wild bergamot, but of course bee balm too, because it's so great for the pollinators, not just the honeybees. So this is my piece, is to say I love the honeybees. Honey is such a great medicine, easy to work with, delicious, a medicine itself in terms of putting medicines in it. This past spring, or May in particular, which is the flowering moon, during that lunar cycle, I was putting a lot of flowers in honey. I'm looking forward to eating them. I've been tasting them, admittedly. But I wanted to say something really important, two things actually. One, which is that I really believe, and I strongly encourage all people, whatever their nations, as a commitment actually to the dish with one spoon wampum and the two-row wampum, which is to be stewards of these lands and to commit to the ceremony of restoring balance as stewards of these lands, and to recognizing the importance of supporting the indigenous relatives. So for every beehive that goes in, may 2 habitats or homes be supported for our native bees. And not just those bee homes for the mason bees, but any number of plants that are critical food for those native bees. Just to, do your work, do that homework to learn about the native bees. There's so many different kinds, really tiny ones, really big ones. And then of course not just the bees, the wasps, and that was the other piece that I wanted to share. So I really encourage, I plead actually, that for every beehive that goes in, twice as much effort is put into restoring habitat for those native pollinators. And the other piece that I want to talk about is regulations for those pollinators that get a bad rap, namely the hornets and the wasps and the yellow jackets. So because they don't provide honey, they don't get kind of elevated like the honeybee does, who obviously also stings. Wasps are so cool. They're epic. Unlike bees, they don't die when they sting, so they can sting and sting and sting. They have really important medicines. For one, like skunk, like poison ivy, like stinging nettles, they teach us really important things about boundaries and also adversely or conversely consent. Those relatives show us that we're supposed to give them space and respect that. And when we don't, when we are bumbling about, as humans often do, and that's kind of like a double entendre or a pun in terms of bumblebees. And this is a homage to my twin, who is freaked out by the bumble of bumblebees. But I think that any relative that we refer to as a pest, whether that's a plant that we call a weed, and by calling it a weed we treat it as a plant that doesn't deserve to be here, whether it's an insect, in so many ways, when we put that stigma or cast that stereotype onto any relative, call it invasive or noxious, we're not in a good relationship. And it's a very colonial mindset, and that allows us to essentially go to war with those relatives. Wasps of all stripes, from the tiny little green metallic ones, so cute and beautiful, to those epic big ones that make the paper nests, have really important roles and responsibilities. They do different kind of pollination work and seed spreading from the honeybee, who is kind of more like an American, is like takes up a lot of space and eats a lot. It's just true. But those wasps, again, have really important medicine. Even in naming that paper wasp nest, it's seen as, for long-standing time, as medicine itself by our medicine people, because as the wasp goes about and chomps up all these different plants and then knits it together to make that paper nest, it's full of medicine, and it's only used in very specific and important preparations for healing. I wanted to share that there are very few, in fact there's only one known dancer that I know of in the seed keeper or the traditional earthwork. I call myself an earthworker, but in the traditional growing community of indigenous people who are still dancing for pollinators. But I just wanted to share that there are in fact dances, powwow and ceremonial dances for pollinators, because as we would dance for the rain, as we would dance for the Three Sisters, corn, bean, squash, for tobacco, any number of dances that we do for those relatives, we also dance for the pollinators because we recognize how important they were to the health of our ecosystem. So I didn't want to talk too much, just a few things to share. So just to slough off any of those stigmas that we put on those pollinators, especially the wasps and the hornets and the yellow jackets. They have their important teachings and their roles. So if you could please spread that, disseminate that like a pollinator would. And also in any of your efforts to restore, of course, the cultivar bee balm is amazing, but wild bergamot has really important spirit medicine that contributes by being restored to the land. So that's what I want to share. That's it. Jimmy Gwitch, Nyawa.